Hi, and welcome to week 3 of Debunking the Myths of Renovation Reality TV. This week we are going to be talking about timelines. So, a timeline is a really important piece of the planning process for your renovation project. And my goal is to help you understand with a more of a realistic idea what timeline to expect for your project. On TV, these projects get done so quick. Obviously, you're watching an edited version, right, of a full project. But even then, the timelines that they're talking about often assume that construction crews are working around the clock to meet production deadlines. And so, in reality, you have to take into account that most crews work, normal business hours, 9 to 5, 8 to 5, Monday through Friday. There are some towns actually have limitations on when construction crews can work, especially if you're in an apartment building. There are often rules about that as well. So weekends may be an option, but sometimes they're not even an option. And so, we're going to talk a little bit about that as we go on. But the first thing I want to actually bring into the conversation of timeline is something that people often don't anticipate or don't think about as much, which is the planning and preparation piece of the timeline. So we always start every project with an intensive design and planning phase. And that piece is really key to setting you up well for your project, as we talked about last week. The idea of making all the decisions before you start allows the construction crews to build your project really efficiently and effectively. Because the most stressful part of the project is when they're in your home with their tools, with the materials, with the dust, with the noise. All of that is the most stressful part. And so we want to keep that time as short as possible by planning really well for the project. And so, our team usually allows 4 to 8 weeks for design, sometimes more than that, depending on the scale of the project. And then we apply for permits. And again, depending where you are in the country, permits could take anywhere from 2 weeks all the way up to 8 weeks. Where we are in Jersey City, a lot of the projects we do are in the historic district here in Jersey City, New Jersey, and those projects have to go through many different layers of approvals. So first, the Historic Preservation Commission gets to look through them. That can take a couple days or a couple weeks to get an appointment with them. Then they go to the zoning board, and then they go to the construction code office. And so each piece of that process takes a couple weeks, and the construction code office has actually up to 4 weeks to review the application by law. So again, 4 to 8 weeks. That's 2 months. So we have people call us sometimes who are like, okay, I have a project. I want to be finished by the end of the month. It's just not possible. Not doing it in this way with the proper approvals, etc. in place. So that's the first part of timeline that's often overlooked, which is the design and planning. So you'll notice with 4 to 8 weeks for design, 4 to 8 weeks for permits, we're up to anywhere from 2 to 4 months before we even get started with any kind of demo, any kind of work in the space itself. And so always good to start looking for a guide, looking for a team to support you with your project early on as possible. Like as soon as you start thinking about it, call somebody. Start calling around. Find the team that's going to support you, and then keep moving forward from there. So the next piece I want to talk about is the construction phase itself. And this is a time when people are actually in your house. This is the most stressful period of time. This is a time where you may actually choose to move out of your home. So again, important to have a clear and realistic timeline, especially if you're going to be moving out of the house or if you're planning around guests or big life events like the arrival of a new baby or a big party that you're planning or something like that. So we have that happen a lot where someone's planning a project and they have a very firm deadline. And so it's important to work backwards from that and make sure that you leave yourself enough buffer space for all of these pieces. For construction, I'll give you a few examples of timelines for different types of projects. For example, a bathroom renovation where we're just kind of coming in, taking out what's there, replacing it with all new, maybe changing the layout a little bit, but no major structural changes. That project I would anticipate takes typically 5 to 6 weeks, because even a project like that does need to have interim approvals from the local building department. They want to do an inspection of the plumbing or electrical that's going to be behind the walls and the framing as well, the insulation. And so we often will have to pause our construction work to wait for those approvals to come in. and then we can continue from there after the inspections have been completed. A kitchen renovation. If it's a direct replacement kitchen, we're keeping everything generally the same, I would allow typically 8 to 10 weeks for that project. Again, there's a lot of different moving parts, a lot of pieces, a lot of trades, inspections, even something like the countertops, for example. A lot of people these days are doing quartz countertops or granite. We have to call the fabricator in once the cabinets are in place, have them make a template, and then they take their template back to the stone yard, and it'll take a week, sometimes 2 weeks, to get back on their schedule to, once it's fabricated, to install that countertop into the space. And so I also will have people come to me with the question, when in the project will I be able to use the space? And the answer typically is at the end. Because a bathroom, for example, the toilet is one of the last things to go in after the floor is tiled, the wall is painted, and all the piping obviously has already been done. Everything behind the walls has been done. The toilet's that's the end. That's the completion of the project. It's the last piece to go in. It's called finished plumbing work, and it's one of the very last pieces on the schedule. Larger projects like a full home remodel, again, this is such a broad category, but to give you an idea, typically if you're looking at renovating, like touching every space in your home, that can take anywhere from 4 months all the way up to a year and beyond, depending on the intricacy and the amount of structural changes, whether you're planning additions or extensions, and that kind of thing. So again, anywhere from 4 months and upwards from there. So I hope that that's helpful to give a little bit more clarity around specific types of projects and what to expect for timelines. And the main reason that I bring this up is because I want you to be empowered. When you're looking for a guide, I want you to find someone who's giving you realistic numbers, realistic expectations around timeline. So if somebody says, yeah, I can finish that in 3 weeks, and it's like a full home remodel, it's just not realistic, And similarly, if someone says, oh, that's going to take me 6 months and it's a bathroom renovation, that's just unacceptable as well. So you really want to have a firm understanding of what's involved and a clear expectation so that you can find a guide who's being really honest with you, realistic, and who you can tell often how much experience someone has by how realistic their timelines are. And if they have the courage to give you a timeline that might not match up with what you were hoping for, that does take courage because they're at risk of losing the project. But if they're willing to say to you, I know that this is when you're hoping to have the project finished by, but realistically, to get this work done well and to get it done properly and with the proper approvals, it's going to take a little bit longer than you thought. That takes integrity and that takes a high level of courage. And so I think that actually is a really good sign that person might be someone who you would want to partner with for your project. Last thing, just before we wrap up, is that I want to break down for you something like a kitchen renovation, right? People will say, oh, why does it take so long? And so I think it's helpful to get a sense of all the steps involved. This is really technical, kind of nitty-gritty details, and so it might not be for everyone, but I think it's helpful for some of you to kind of understand why it might take that long. So the steps involved, right? This is kind of a breakdown of a typical schedule for a kitchen renovation. So the first couple of days would be demo. They take out everything that's there and haul it away from the house, getting it into all the different, getting it into their trucks and taking it away. And then after that, they can do framing, touching up anything behind the walls that isn't quite right, that needs to change. If we're creating any new openings between kitchens and dining rooms, for example, all that framing happens next. Then rough plumbing and rough electrical. So that would be week 2, would be rough plumbing for a couple of days where they're running the pipes, the drains, gas line, anything that goes behind the wall. And then rough electrical, again, running the wires to the locations where outlets, switches, light fixtures will go at the completion of the project. After that, you get inspections. So like I was saying earlier, the inspectors want to see everything that's behind the wall and make sure it's done properly before the walls are closed up. After the inspections are completed, insulation, sheetrock goes in, so the walls get closed up. The sheetrock gets taped and spackled, so that job alone can take a week or so because there's layers of spackle that go on. Every time a layer of spackle goes on, it needs time to dry before it's sanded and the next layer goes on. Typically there's 3 layers. And then after spackling, there could be painting or flooring. Again, probably anywhere from 3 days to a week for each of those. And then the cabinetry comes in. So what are we at now? I think we're at like 4 to 5 weeks already. And then the cabinetry comes in and gets installed. And once the cabinetry is there and installed, they can make a template for the countertops like we talked about earlier. So I think we're about 6 weeks and we have a template being made for the countertops. While they're waiting for the countertops, maybe they're finishing up the tiling, not the tiling, excuse me, they're maybe finishing up any paint touch-ups or any other miscellaneous projects around the space. And then once the countertops are in, the plumber can come finish up tying in the sink and start to put in some of the appliances. And then the tile crew comes in to put in the backsplash tile. The electrician comes in to finish up the outlets. We're on week 8, I think now, 8 or 9, right? You can see how this is all starting to add up. All the appliances get put in, finishing touches, punch list, final inspections, and now you can move back into your kitchen. So that there kind of gives you an idea of all the different moving parts of a project. It's also why all of those decisions being made in advance is really helpful, because imagine that 10 weeks can really jump to much longer timeline if we're waiting on any decisions. Like if you haven't chosen the cabinets and halfway through your project you have to choose the cabinets and then wait for them to be available or wait for them to be delivered. That's just going to add so much time to the period of time that you're without a kitchen in your home. So again, not ideal. We always love to make all the decisions before we start so we can order the materials and be ready to go once construction begins. I hope this has been helpful. Again, this is Tammy from House Play Renovations. I am excited to be supporting you with these videos. Please reply to the email if you have any questions or any feedback. I'd love to hear from you. And if there's anything we can do to help you with our project, you can reach out to us and contact us at hprnj.com. Go to the contact form and tell us a little bit more about what you're looking to do in your home and how we might be able to support you. Have a beautiful day and tune in next week for some more Debunking the Myths of Reality TV.